The moment I pressed play on that little silver voice recorder, my entire marriage collapsed in under 90 seconds. I was on my knees in the hallway, rubber gloves still on, the mop leaning against the wall behind me, a bucket of Pine Sol water slowly cooling next to my left hip. The house smelled like lemon and clean tile. I'd been in such a good mood 10 minutes earlier. My husband Brandon was coming home a day early from his business trip to Denver, and I wanted the house to look perfect. I wanted him to walk through the front door, drop his carry-on, breathe in that clean house smell, and smile at me the way he used to, like I was the only thing in the room worth looking at. Instead, I was crouched on the floor of our hallway, holding a voice recorder I'd found wedged between the baseboard and the wall behind the hallway console table. A device I had never seen before, a device my husband had clearly hidden. And the voice coming out of it was mine. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back. Let me tell you how I got here, on my knees, in a house I thought was my sanctuary, listening to a recording that made me question every single day of the last 4 years. My name is Ashley Whitfield. I'm 32 years old. I lived, in a 3-bedroom ranch-style house in Maple Ridge, a quiet suburb about 40 minutes outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. The kind of neighborhood where people put out inflatable turkeys in November and compete over Christmas lights in December. The kind of place where you wave at your neighbors even if you don't remember their names. HOA fees were $185 a month, which Brandon always complained about, but I loved what they paid for. The community pool, the maintained walking trails, the little playground at the end of Birchwood Lane where kids shrieked and laughed every afternoon until the streetlights came on. Brandon and I met 5 years ago at a friend's birthday party. My college roommate Jenna was turning 27 at a rooftop bar in uptown Charlotte, and Brandon was there because he worked with Jenna's boyfriend Derek at the same logistics company. He was tall, 6'1", with sandy brown hair and these deep green eyes that crinkled at the corners when he laughed. He laughed a lot that night. He bought me a drink without being pushy about it. He asked me questions and actually listened to the answers. When I told him I was a second-grade teacher at Pinewood Elementary, he didn't do the thing most guys did, the little smirk, the, "oh, that's sweet," dismissal. He leaned in and said, "That's the hardest job in the world, and nobody pays you enough for it." I think I fell for him somewhere between that sentence and the end of the night. We dated for a year. He proposed on a Saturday morning, not at some fancy restaurant, but in our kitchen, the apartment we'd moved into together on Oak Park Drive. I was making scrambled eggs. He walked in with the ring box behind his back and said, "Ash, I don't want to do a single morning without you for the rest of my life." It was simple. It was perfect. I cried into my spatula and said yes before he even got the box fully open. We got married at a little venue outside of Asheville. 68 guests. My mom cried. His mom, Linda, wore a hat so big it blocked the view of 3 people behind her. But I didn't care. The whole day felt golden. We honeymooned in Savannah, walked the cobblestone streets, ate shrimp and grits at every restaurant we found, and talked about the future like it was something we could hold in our hands. And for a while, that future delivered. Brandon got promoted to Regional Operations Manager at Mid-South Freight Solutions. His salary jumped from $67,000 to $89,000, plus quarterly bonuses. We saved up, got pre-approved, and bought the house on Larkspur Court in Maple Ridge. I remember the day we got the keys. I stood in the empty living room, afternoon light pouring through the big bay window, and I thought, this is it. This is the life I always wanted. I kept teaching. I loved my kids, 21 second graders who called me Mrs. Whitfield and drew me pictures of cats and rainbows. Brandon traveled for work maybe once or twice a month, Denver, Atlanta, sometimes Dallas. He'd always text me when he landed, call me before bed, send me silly photos of hotel room views or weird items he found in airport gift shops. A snow globe from Denver with a bear wearing sunglasses. A keychain from Atlanta shaped like a peach. Small things, sweet things. Our weekends were ours. Saturday mornings we'd go to the farmer's market on Elm Street, buy tomatoes and fresh bread, come home and cook together. Sundays, we'd do yard work or binge something on Netflix or drive out to Lake Norman and sit by the water with sandwiches and cheap beer. We weren't rich, we weren't glamorous, but we were happy, or at least I was convinced we were. My best friend Megan used to say we were the couple she measured other couples against. "You and Brandon just make sense," she told me once, sipping wine on my back porch. "Like, you actually like each other. That's rarer than people think." I believed her. I believed all of it. Brandon's business trips had become more frequent starting around January of that year. Instead of once or twice a month, it crept up to 3, sometimes 4 times. He said Mid-South was expanding their southeastern routes and needed him on site for client meetings, warehouse audits, logistics reviews. It sounded reasonable. He was good at his job. His boss, a man named Gerald Hutchins, had apparently told Brandon he was being considered for a VP position that would open up in the fall. That meant more travel now, but a corner office and a $120,000 salary later. "Just hang in there with me, Ash," Brandon said one night in February, zipping his suitcase on the bed. "6 more months of this, and then I'm home more. I promise." "I know," I said, handing him his phone charger. "I just miss you." He kissed my forehead. "I miss you too, every single time." And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? There were no red flags, no lipstick on collars, no mysterious charges on the credit card, no whispered phone calls in the other room. He was just busy, ambitious, building something for us. That's what I told myself every time I ate dinner alone or fell asleep in an empty bed. He's doing this for us. The morning everything changed was a Thursday in April 17th to be exact. Brandon had left for Denver 2 days earlier, a 3-day trip, supposed to come back Friday evening. I was sitting in the teacher's lounge during my lunch break, picking at a sad little salad, when my phone buzzed with a text from him. "Hey babe, meeting's wrapped up early. Catching a flight home tonight, should land around 9. Don't wait up if you're tired. Love you." I smiled. I actually smiled so wide that my colleague, Patrice, looked over and said, "Good news?" "Brandon's coming home early," I said. "Lucky girl," Patrice replied. I left school that afternoon with a burst of energy I hadn't felt in weeks. I stopped at Harris Teeter on the way home, picked up the ingredients for Brandon's favorite meal, garlic butter chicken thighs with roasted asparagus and mashed potatoes. I grabbed a bottle of that Merlot he liked, the one with the black label from the Napa Valley section. I was practically humming in the checkout line. When I got home, I looked around the house with fresh eyes, the way you do when you know someone's coming and you suddenly see every dust bunny, every smudge, every crooked pillow. The kitchen was fine. The living room needed a quick vacuum. But the floors, the hardwood floors that ran through the hallway and into the bedrooms, they hadn't been properly mopped in at least 2 weeks, and I could see the dullness, the faint footprints near the entryway. So I changed into leggings and an old UNC t-shirt, filled the bucket, pulled on my yellow rubber gloves, and started mopping. I worked my way from the kitchen, through the living room, down the hallway. I was thorough. I moved the small console table we kept against the hallway wall, the one where we tossed our keys and stacked the mail. I pushed it out from the wall to get the mop behind it. That's when I saw it. A small silver device, about the size of a USB stick but thicker, wedged between the baseboard and the wall. It had been tucked right behind the back left leg of the console table, in that narrow gap where the table met the wall. You'd never see it unless you moved the furniture. I almost ignored it, thought it was a flash drive or maybe a piece of something that had fallen. But when I picked it up, I felt the tiny button on the side. I turned it over. There was a small screen, a number on it, 004732. 47 minutes and 32 seconds of recorded audio. My stomach did something strange. Not a drop exactly, more like a slow tightening, a quiet alarm going off somewhere deep inside me. Why would there be a voice recorder hidden behind our hallway table? I sat down on the floor, right there in the hallway, mop water still shining on the boards around me. I held the recorder in my gloved hand. My thumb hovered over the play button. I should have waited. I should have asked Brandon about it when he got home. I should have done 100 things differently. But something in my gut, some ancient animal instinct, told me that if I waited, I'd never hear what was on this device, that somehow it would disappear, that the truth would slip away from me, the way it apparently had been slipping away for God knows how long. So I pressed play, and the first voice I heard was my own, from what sounded like a phone conversation I'd had in this very hallway, maybe days ago, maybe weeks. I could hear myself laughing, talking to Megan about weekend plans. Then silence. Then another recording, me on the phone with my mom, complaining about a parent-teacher conference. Then another, and another. My husband had been recording me, in our home, without my knowledge. The rubber gloves made a squeaking sound as my hands began to shake, and then, about 12 minutes in, the recordings changed. It wasn't just my voice anymore. It was Brandon's voice, but not talking to me. He was talking to someone else, a woman, and the things he was saying made the walls of my clean, lemon-scented hallway close in around me like a fist. I sat there, frozen, mop water going cold, as the man I loved more than anything in this world revealed himself to be someone I had never met. The woman's name was Danielle. I learned that in the first 30 seconds of their conversation. Brandon's voice was relaxed, warm, the kind of warm he used to reserve for me, that low, easy tone that made you feel like you were the center of his universe. Danielle, listen, she's not going to find out. She never moves that table. I've had it there for 3 weeks and she hasn't touched it. A laugh. Female, light and careless. You're paranoid, baby. I told you. Just use your phone like a normal person. I can't. She knows my passcode. She picks it up sometimes when I'm in the shower. The recorder is safer. I need to know what she's saying when I'm gone, who she's talking to, what she's telling people about us, about our money, if she's talking to a lawyer. My blood turned to ice water. He was recording me because he thought I was talking to a divorce lawyer. Me, the woman who'd spent the last 4 years building a life around him, who ironed his shirts on Sunday nights, who kept a running grocery list on the fridge organized by aisle number because he once mentioned it would save time. He thought I was planning to leave him. And the sick irony was that until 90 seconds ago, leaving Brandon Whitfield was the furthest thing from my mind. Danielle's voice came back, softer now. When are you going to tell her? You said after the Denver thing. Denver's almost done, Brandon. A pause. I heard him exhale. I know what I said. But the house, we're still on the mortgage together. If I tell her now and she goes scorched earth, I'm looking at losing the house, half my 401k, maybe more. I need to know what she's planning first. That's why the recorder matters. So what, you're just going to keep playing house until the math works out? I'm going to keep playing house until I have leverage, Danielle. There's a difference. Leverage. He used the word leverage. About me. About our marriage. About the life I thought we were building together, brick by careful brick. I pressed pause. I had to. My chest was doing something I'd never felt before. Not pain exactly, but a kind of vacuum, like all the air had been sucked out of my ribcage and replaced with nothing. Absolute nothing. I sat on that hallway floor for maybe 5 minutes, staring at the wall across from me. The wall I'd painted agreeable gray 2 summers ago because Brandon said he liked neutral tones. The wall where I'd hung 3 framed photos, our wedding day, a sunset at Lake Norman, a candid shot of us at Jenna and Derek's 4th of July barbecue. In that photo, Brandon's arm was around my shoulders and I was mid-laugh, and we looked so stupidly happy that Megan had texted me afterward saying, "Frame that one, that's the one." I pressed play again. I had to hear all of it. The recording spanned what seemed like multiple days. Some were just me, talking to Megan on the phone, calling my mom, once singing badly to myself while I folded laundry. Mundane, private, vulnerable moments that Brandon had captured like a hunter setting traps. But scattered between those recordings were more conversations with Danielle. 4 of them total, each one worse than the last. In one, he told her he loved her. casually, like it was something he said every day. "Love you. I'll call you when I land." In another, she asked about a weekend trip to Asheville. Asheville, the place where we got married. And he said, "Yeah, I'll tell Ash it's a client thing. She never checks." She never checks. 4 words that told me exactly how stupid he thought I was. The last recorded conversation was the one that broke something fundamental inside me. Danielle asked, "Do you even feel bad?" And Brandon said, and I will never forget this, not if I live to be 100. He said, "I feel bad that I don't feel bad. Does that count?" They both laughed. I turned the recorder off. I pulled off my rubber gloves. I stood up. I walked to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of the Merlot I'd bought for our special dinner, and I drank the entire thing standing at the counter, staring at the garlic butter chicken ingredients laid out on the cutting board, like props from a life that no longer existed. Then I called Megan. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" "Can you come over?" My voice was steady, which surprised me. "Right now, please." She heard it, whatever was underneath the steadiness. "I'm on my way, 20 minutes. She made it in 15. When she walked through the front door, I was still standing in the kitchen, second glass of wine in hand, the recorder sitting on the counter between the asparagus and the bottle of Merlot. Megan took one look at my face and said, "Oh God, what happened?" I didn't explain. I just pressed play and let her listen. Megan is not a crier. She's a 5'2" firecracker from Gastonia who once got a used car dealer to knock $3,200 off a sticker price by simply refusing to blink. But when Brandon's voice said leverage, her eyes went glassy. When Danielle laughed about Asheville, Megan's jaw tightened so hard I could see the muscles in her neck. When the recording ended, she looked at me and said one word: lawyer. "Megan, no. Lawyer. Tomorrow morning, first thing, do not talk to him tonight. Do not confront him. Do not let him know you found this. Ashley, look at me." She grabbed both my hands. "He has been building a case against you. He's been recording you illegally. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, but he's recording you without being present, which means he's not a party to those conversations. That might be illegal. You need a lawyer before you need anything else." I stared at her. "He's coming home tonight. His flight lands at 9. Then you have," she checked her phone, 4 hours to decide who you're going to be when he walks through that door. You can be the wife who tips her hand, or you can be the wife who plays the long game. I'm telling you right now, Ash, play the long game." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the chicken thighs against the wall. I wanted to call Brandon right then and say every vicious thing boiling inside me. But Megan was right, and I knew it. He'd been strategic, calculating. He'd hidden a recording device in our home to gather intelligence on me, like I was an opposing counsel, not his wife. If I confronted him now, emotional, unprepared, with nothing but a voice recorder and a broken heart, he'd find a way to spin it. He'd minimize. He'd gaslight. He'd tell me Danielle was nobody, the recordings were nothing, that I was overreacting. So I cooked the dinner. I know how insane that sounds, but I stood in that kitchen and I cooked the garlic butter chicken thighs with roasted asparagus and mashed potatoes. I set the table for 2. I lit the candle, the vanilla one from Target that Brandon liked. I put the recorder back exactly where I found it, behind the console table, wedged between the baseboard and the wall. I even mopped over the spot again so there'd be no sign I'd disturbed anything. When Brandon walked through the front door at 9:47 p.m., carry-on rolling behind him, he stopped in the entryway and breathed in deep. "Oh my God, it smells amazing in here. Ash, you didn't have to do all this." I smiled. It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. "I wanted to. I missed you." He dropped his bag, crossed the kitchen, and kissed me. His lips were warm. He smelled like airport and coffee and the cologne I'd bought him for Christmas. Bleu de Chanel, $98 at Macy's. I let him kiss me, and I kissed him back, and every cell in my body screamed. "How was Denver?" I asked, turning back to the stove. "Long, boring. Gerald had me in back-to-back meetings all day Wednesday, but we locked in the new routing contract, so that's good. VP track is still on." "That's great, babe." He sat down at the table. I served the food. We ate. He told me about the hotel, about a funny thing that happened at the airport. A kid had spilled an entire smoothie on the TSA conveyor belt. I laughed in all the right places. I asked follow-up questions. I was performing the role of Ashley Whitfield, happy wife, and I was terrified by how easy it was. How many times had he sat across from me, performing the role of Brandon Whitfield, loving husband? After dinner, he leaned back in his chair and said, "You know what I was thinking on the plane? We should do a weekend trip soon. Just us. Maybe Hilton Head. You've been wanting to go." Hilton Head. My chest tightened. Was this real, or was this another role? Was he planning Hilton Head with me and Asheville with Danielle, shuffling us like cards in a deck? "That sounds wonderful," I said. "Let's look at dates this weekend." He smiled. Those green eyes crinkled at the corners, and for one terrible, treacherous second, I felt a wave of hope. Maybe I'd misunderstood the recordings. Maybe Danielle was nobody. Maybe there was an explanation. That hope lasted until 11:30 that night, when Brandon was asleep beside me and his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I wouldn't have looked, the old Ashley wouldn't have looked, but the old Ashley was dead. She died on a hallway floor at 4:15 that afternoon. I reached over, slow and careful, and tilted the phone toward me. The screen lit up with a text notification. It was from a contact saved as Gerald H., his boss's name. The message read, "Miss you already. Tonight was supposed to be our night. You owe me, baby." Gerald Hutchins did not call anyone baby. Brandon had saved Danielle's number under his boss's name, which meant every time I'd seen him texting Gerald or taking a call from Gerald, every time he'd said, "Sorry, it's work," and stepped into the other room, it was her. All of it was her. I put the phone down. I stared at the ceiling. Brandon's breathing was slow and even beside me, the breathing of a man with a perfectly clear conscience. I didn't sleep that night. Not 1 minute. The next morning, Friday, I called in sick to school for the first time in 2 years. Brandon left for the office at 7:45, kissed my forehead, told me to rest up. The second his car pulled out of the driveway, I was on my laptop. I found a divorce attorney named Rachel Thornton, whose office was on Providence Road in Charlotte. Her website said she specialized in complex marital dissolution with hidden assets. Her consultation fee was $350 for the first hour. I booked the 10 a.m. slot. Then I copied every recording from the silver device onto my laptop, uploaded them to a secure cloud folder, and emailed the link to myself and to Megan. Evidence preserved. Then I put the recorder back behind the console table, exactly where it had been. At Rachel Thornton's office, I sat in a leather chair across from a woman with sharp brown eyes and silver rings on both hands, and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she folded her hands on her desk and said, "Ashley, I need to ask you something important. Do you want to save this marriage, or do you want to leave it in the strongest possible position?" I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. "I want to leave it in the strongest possible position." She nodded, like she'd expected that answer. "Good, then here's what we're going to do. And here's what you absolutely cannot do. You cannot confront him yet. You cannot tell him you know. Every day you maintain the status quo is a day we use to build your case. I need bank statements, tax returns, his pay stubs, anything related to the 401k. I need the mortgage documents. And I need you to find out who Danielle is. Full name, how long this has been going on, whether he's spent marital funds on her. Can you do that?" Yes, I said, and I meant it. For the next 2 weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I smiled at Brandon over breakfast. I packed his lunches. I texted him heart emojis when he was on the road. And every moment he was out of the house, I was gathering. Bank statements from the filing cabinet in the office. I photographed every page. Credit card statements going back 6 months. His laptop was password protected, but I knew him well enough to guess it on the 3rd try. Lac Norman, 2021, the year we'd taken that photo I loved so much. I found emails. I found hotel receipts. I found a Venmo history that showed regular payments to someone named Danielle Pruitt. $200 here, $350 there. Once $1,400 with the memo line, Trip Fund. Trip Fund. For Asheville. For the city where he'd married me. I gave everything to Rachel Thornton. She reviewed it with a forensic accountant named Steve, who wore reading glasses on a chain, and said, a lot. The total amount Brandon had funneled to Danielle over the past 8 months came to just over $11,600. Marital funds. Our money. Money that could have gone to the mortgage, to savings, to the future he kept promising me. Rachel looked at me across her desk and said, "This is good, Ashley. This is very good for you. But I need you to hold steady a little longer. Can you do that?" I nodded. But holding steady was becoming impossible, because 3 days later, Brandon came home from work and said the words that almost shattered my entire strategy. "Ash, I think we should start trying for a baby." He said it while I was washing dishes, just dropped it into the kitchen air like it was nothing, like it was the next logical step in our beautiful, honest life together. I gripped the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles went white under the suds. "Really?" I managed. "Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about it for a while. The house has 3 bedrooms. My salary's about to go up. I think the timing's right, don't you?" I turned around and looked at him. He was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, smiling. That smile. The same smile from the rooftop bar 5 years ago. The same smile that made me think he was the safest person in the world. "Let me think about it," I said. "It's a big decision." "Of course, no pressure, just, I want you to know I'm serious about us, Ash, about our future." He walked over and hugged me from behind, his chin resting on the top of my head, and I stood there with dish soap on my hands and a scream lodged so deep in my throat I thought I might choke on it. That night, I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes after he fell asleep, gripping the steering wheel, calling Megan on speaker. "He wants a baby," I whispered. "Megan, he wants a baby. While he's sending Venmo payments to another woman and recording me in my own house, he wants to bring a child into this." "He doesn't want a baby," Megan said, her voice tight with fury. "He wants an anchor, a reason for you to stay, a reason to make the divorce harder. Ashley, you need to move faster." She was right. The clock was ticking, and I didn't know yet just how fast it was about to run out, because what I'd found on that recorder and in those bank statements was only the surface. The real betrayal, the one that would bring me to my knees for the second time, was still waiting, and it was closer than I thought. I moved faster after that conversation with Megan, but the universe moved faster than me. The following Monday, I was in Rachel Thornton's office going over the financial documents I'd gathered when she leaned forward and said something that made my stomach drop through the floor. "Ashley, I need you to look at this." She slid a printout across the desk. It was a page from Brandon's credit report that Steve, the forensic accountant, had pulled through legal channels. "Do you see this line here? This is a joint credit application filed 3 weeks ago. A personal loan, $35,000, from Atlantic Capital Partners. Both your names are on it." I stared at the paper. "I never signed a loan application." "I know you didn't, but someone did. Your signature is on this document, Ashley. Your social security number, your employment information." The room tilted. I grabbed the armrest of the leather chair. "He forged my signature?" Rachel's expression was calm, professional, but her eyes were hard. "That's what it looks like. The loan was approved and disbursed 10 days ago. The funds went into an account at First National that's solely in Brandon's name. An account, I should add, that you didn't know existed. I didn't know it existed. Of course I didn't, because while I was packing his lunches and sending him heart emojis and cooking garlic butter chicken like a devoted wife, my husband had opened a secret bank account and taken out a $35,000 loan with my forged signature. $35,000 of debt with my name on it, my credit, my social security number. This is fraud, Rachel said. Federal level fraud. We now have options that go beyond divorce court. But Ashley, this also means he's preparing. He's moving money. Whatever he's planning, he's accelerating. We need to accelerate too. I drove home from that appointment with my hands shaking so badly I had to pull over twice. I sat in a Walgreens parking lot off Independence Boulevard and pressed my forehead against the steering wheel and tried to breathe. The math kept running through my head. The $11,600 in Venmo payments to Danielle, the $35,000 loan, the secret bank account, the voice recorder, the fake contact name in his phone. Layer after layer after layer of deception, each one more calculated than the last. This wasn't a man who'd made a mistake. This was a man who was systematically dismantling our marriage while smiling at me across the dinner table. And then came the thing that broke me completely. That Wednesday, I was at school, teaching my second graders about fractions, using paper plates cut into halves and quarters, when the school secretary, Mrs. Givens, appeared in my classroom doorway. "Mrs. Whitfield, there's someone here to see you. She says it's personal." I stepped into the hallway expecting Megan, maybe my mom. Instead, there was a woman I'd never seen before. She was about my age, maybe a year or two younger, with dark auburn hair pulled into a low ponytail and brown eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. She was wearing a gray cardigan over a white blouse, and her hands were clasped so tightly in front of her that her knuckles were bone white. "Are you Ashley?" she asked. "Yes, can I help you?" "My name is Danielle Pruitt." The hallway went silent. Not literally. I could still hear my students chattering behind the closed door, still hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. But inside my head, everything went quiet. Like the moment before a car crash, when time stretches and you see everything with terrible clarity. "I know who you are," I said. My voice came out flat, dead. "I figured you might. Can we talk? Not here, somewhere private." I should have said no. I should have walked back into my classroom and called Rachel Thornton, but I looked at Danielle Pruitt's face, the dark circles, the trembling hands, the way she kept glancing down the hallway like she was afraid someone had followed her, and something told me this woman wasn't here to gloat. She was here because she was scared. I told Mrs. Givens I needed 15 minutes. We walked to my car in the parking lot. I didn't offer her the passenger seat. We stood outside, leaning against the trunk, April sun warm on our faces, and Danielle told me things that made the ground beneath my feet disappear entirely. "He told me you were separated," she said, "from the very beginning. He said you were living in the house together for financial reasons while the divorce was being finalized. He said you barely spoke. He said," her voice cracked, "he said you were emotionally abusive and that he was afraid to leave because you'd threatened to destroy him financially." I couldn't speak. I literally could not form words. My mouth opened and nothing came out. I believed him, Ashley. For 8 months, I believed every word. I thought I was helping him escape a bad situation. I thought, she pressed her hand to her mouth. 3 days ago, I found plane tickets on his laptop. 2 tickets to Turks and Caicos for June. His name and a woman named Karen Bishop. Not you, not me, someone else entirely. Karen Bishop, a third woman. While he was married to me and sleeping with Danielle, there was a third woman. My legs gave out. I didn't faint. I just slid down the side of my car until I was sitting on the asphalt of the Pinewood Elementary parking lot, my teaching skirt riding up, my palms flat on the warm pavement. Danielle crouched beside me. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "Ashley, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." "The Venmo payments," I heard myself say. "The $1,400 for the trip fund." Her face crumbled. He told me that was money from his savings. He said it was for our trip to Asheville. I didn't know it was... Oh, God, you got married in Asheville, didn't you? I nodded. I couldn't cry. I was beyond crying. I was in some airless place where tears couldn't reach, where the only thing that existed was the hard, hot asphalt under my hands and the sound of children playing on the other side of the building, laughing and shrieking, living in a world where people didn't do things like this to each other. Danielle sat down next to me on the pavement, 2 women in a parking lot undone by the same man. She told me more. She told me Brandon had given her a story about me so detailed, so convincing, that she'd never questioned it. He'd described fights we'd supposedly had, cruel things I'd supposedly said. He'd manufactured an entire abusive wife narrative to justify the affair. And the whole time, the real me was at home ironing his shirts and organizing the grocery list by aisle number. The recorder, I said suddenly. Did you know about the voice recorder? Danielle looked confused. What recorder? He hid a voice recorder in our house, behind the hallway table. He was recording my phone conversations. He told you, on the recording, that he was trying to see if I was talking to a lawyer. He said he needed leverage. The color drained from Danielle's face. He recorded you in your own home? He recorded both of us. Your conversations with him are on there too. She covered her mouth with both hands. For a full minute, neither of us spoke. Then Danielle said something that changed everything. Ashley, I have his laptop password. I have access to his email. And 3 days ago, before I found those plane tickets, I copied his entire hard drive onto an external drive because something felt wrong, and I didn't know what. I have everything. Bank records, emails, texts he backed up, documents, everything. And I think you need to see what's on there. Because if he's doing this to both of us, there's no telling what else he's hiding. I looked at her. This woman I'd hated for weeks without ever meeting her. This woman whose name had made my blood boil every time I'd seen it on a Venmo statement. She was sitting on the ground next to me in a school parking lot, mascara smudged, offering me the keys to my husband's entire secret life. Why? I asked. Why would you help me? Danielle's eyes met mine, and they were blazing, not with sadness anymore, with fury. Because he looked me in the eyes every single day and lied. He told me I was the love of his life while he was booking trips with someone named Karen. He used me. He used you. And I want him to feel what it's like when everything he's built comes crashing down. I reached out and took her hand. She squeezed back. And sitting there on that warm asphalt, I felt something shift, something tectonic and irreversible. I was no longer a woman alone, fumbling through the wreckage of her marriage. I had an ally, an unexpected, impossible, furious ally who had access to every digital skeleton in Brandon Whitfield's closet. I went back inside, finished my school day on autopilot, and drove straight to Rachel Thornton's office with Danielle following in her own car. When we walked in together, Rachel looked up from her desk, glanced between us, and said, "Well, this is going to be interesting." Danielle handed over the external hard drive. Rachel plugged it into her laptop, and Steve, the forensic accountant, was called in. Within 2 hours, we had a picture so complete and so damning that even Rachel, a woman who'd seen the worst of human behavior across 20 years of divorce law, sat back in her chair and said, "In my entire career, I have never seen someone this methodical about self-destruction." The hard drive contained everything. Emails to Danielle, emails to Karen Bishop, a woman from Raleigh he'd met on a dating app 4 months ago, hotel bookings, a second credit card I'd never known about with a $12,000 balance, and buried in a folder labeled Tax Docs 2019, a place no one would think to look, a document that made Rachel pick up her phone and call a criminal attorney on the spot. It was a draft of a custody agreement for a child that didn't exist yet. Brandon had drafted a custody plan for the baby he'd suggested we have, the baby he'd proposed over dishes just 2 weeks ago, and in the draft, he'd outlined how primary custody should go to the father, given the mother's documented history of emotional instability and erratic behavior. He was going to use those recordings, my private phone calls, my singing while folding laundry, whatever he could twist, to build a case that I was unstable. He wanted a baby not because he loved me, not because he wanted a family. He wanted a baby because a baby was leverage. A baby was a chain. A baby was the thing that would keep me tied to him while he drained our finances and lived his triple life. Rachel looked at me across her desk. Danielle sat beside me, gripping the arm of her chair. Steve was scrolling through files with his reading glasses halfway down his nose, murmuring, "Mm-hmm," in a tone that now sounded like a verdict. "Ashley," Rachel said, "we have more than enough. It's time to move. Are you ready?" I thought about the woman I'd been 3 weeks ago, the woman mopping floors, humming to herself, buying Merlot for a husband who deserved nothing. That woman was gone. The woman sitting in this office had bank records, recordings, a forged loan application, a forensic accountant, a divorce attorney, and an ally no one saw coming. "I'm ready," I said. "Tell me the plan." Rachel opened a legal pad and uncapped her pen. "Here's what happens next, and Brandon is not going to see any of it coming." Rachel's plan had 3 phases, and she laid them out with the precision of a surgeon marking incision lines. Phase 1, secure a temporary restraining order based on the illegal recordings and the forged loan application. Phase 2, file for divorce with an emergency motion to freeze all marital assets, including the secret account at First National. Phase 3, and this was the part that made Danielle lean forward in her chair, file a criminal complaint for fraud and forgery with the Mecklenburg County District Attorney's Office. "The forged loan is your nuclear option," Rachel said, tapping her pen against the legal pad. "That's not a civil matter. That's a felony. And once that complaint is filed, Brandon loses all leverage, every bit of it. You can't negotiate from a position of strength when you're facing federal fraud charges." "When do we move?" I asked. "Friday. This Friday. I'll have the paperwork filed by noon. The restraining order should be granted same day given the circumstances. Brandon will be served at his office at Mid-South by a process server at approximately 2 p.m. He won't see it coming, and by the time he does, the accounts will already be frozen." 3 days. I had to hold it together for 3 more days. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. Tuesday night, Brandon brought home takeout from that Thai place I liked on Park Road, and we sat on the couch watching a home renovation show, and he kept his hand on my knee, and I smiled and laughed and died inside, 1 cell at a time. Wednesday, he texted me a photo of a golden retriever puppy he'd seen on Instagram with the caption, "Our future baby's future best friend," and I sent back a heart emoji and then locked myself in the school bathroom and pressed my fist against my mouth until the shaking stopped. Thursday night was the hardest. He came home in a good mood, talking about the VP position, about Gerald giving him positive signals. Gerald, the name he'd used to hide Danielle in his phone. I watched him talk and I thought, I know you. I finally, actually know you. And you are a stranger. Friday morning, April 30th. Brandon left for work at 7:45, same as always. Kissed my forehead, same as always. "Have a good day, Ash," same as always. I didn't go to school. I drove straight to Rachel Thornton's office. Danielle was already there, sitting in the waiting room with a coffee she hadn't touched. We looked at each other. She nodded once. I nodded back. At 11:58 a.m., Rachel filed the divorce petition with the Mecklenburg County Courthouse. Emergency motion to freeze assets. Filed. At 12:15, the temporary restraining order was submitted, supported by affidavits from me, Danielle, and Steve, the forensic accountant. By 1:30, the judge had signed it. At 2:07 p.m., a process server named Dennis walked into the offices of Mid-South Freight Solutions on South Tryon Street and asked for Brandon Whitfield. I know this because Rachel had arranged for the service to be documented. Dennis later told us that Brandon was in a glass-walled conference room with 3 colleagues when he was called out. He came into the hallway smiling, probably thinking it was a delivery. Dennis handed him the envelope and said, "You've been served." Brandon opened the envelope right there in the hallway. Rachel told me afterward that most people go pale. Brandon apparently went red, a deep, blotchy crimson that started at his neck and climbed to his forehead. He looked up at Dennis and said, "There's been a mistake." "No mistake, sir. Have a good day." Brandon called me 11 times between 2:15 and 2:45. I didn't answer. He sent 14 text messages. The first one said, "Ash, what is this? Call me, please." The last one said, "This is insane. You're making a huge mistake. I'm coming home." He couldn't come home. The restraining order prohibited him from entering the residence on Larkspur Court. When he pulled into the driveway at 3:20, I was watching from the living room window, a Maple Ridge police officer was already parked at the curb. Officer Delgado, a calm woman with a firm voice, stepped out and met Brandon on the front walk. "Mr. Whitfield, I need you to step back to your vehicle. There's a temporary restraining order in effect. You cannot enter this property." "This is my house," Brandon's voice carried through the closed window. "I own this house." "Sir, the order is signed by a judge. If you enter the property, you will be arrested. I need you to return to your vehicle now." I watched Brandon stand on the walkway we'd edged together last summer, the one where I'd planted creeping thyme between the pavers because a gardening blog said it smelled nice when you stepped on it. And I watched his face cycle through shock, rage, confusion, and something that almost looked like fear. He looked up at the house. I don't know if he could see me through the window. I didn't move. He got back in his car. He sat there for 3 minutes. Then he drove away. That night, alone in the house for the first time since everything began, I sat on the hallway floor in the exact spot where I'd found the recorder. The boards were clean. The house smelled like pine sol. I called Megan, and when she answered, I said, "It's done." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. "How do you feel?" I thought about it. Like I just performed surgery on myself without anesthesia. But the tumor's out. Over the next 6 weeks, Brandon's carefully constructed world came apart like wet cardboard. Rachel was relentless. The frozen accounts revealed that the $35,000 loan had already been partially spent. $8,400 transferred to Danielle for what his emails described as apartment setup costs. He'd been helping her furnish a place he planned to move into. And $4,200 sent to Karen Bishop for reasons Steve was still tracing. The remaining balance sat in the First National account like evidence in a museum display case. The criminal complaint moved faster than I expected. The DA's office took one look at the forged loan application and opened an investigation within 2 weeks. Brandon hired a criminal defense attorney, a man named Victor Pratt, whose hourly rate, according to courthouse gossip Rachel relayed to me, was $475. The legal fees alone were going to bury him. Brandon tried to fight the divorce. Of course he did. His divorce attorney, separate from the criminal one, filed a response claiming the marriage was salvageable and requesting couples counseling. Rachel laughed out loud when she read it. "He's stalling. He knows what we have. He's trying to buy time to move money we haven't found yet." But we had found it. All of it. Steve's forensic audit was thorough and devastating. In total, Brandon had diverted $47,800 in marital funds over the past 11 months. Venmo payments, cash withdrawals, transfers to the secret account, credit card charges for hotels and dinners, and gifts that were never for me. Rachel presented the full accounting to Brandon's attorney in a conference room on a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't there, but Rachel told me that Brandon's lawyer read the document, turned to Brandon, and said, "We need to talk. Privately. Now." 2 days later, Brandon agreed to an uncontested divorce. He signed over full ownership of the house on Larkspur Court. He agreed to pay the $35,000 loan in full, removing my name from the debt. I received 60% of the combined retirement accounts, which Rachel argued for based on the dissipation of marital assets. Brandon's attorney didn't even counter. They knew what was coming if this went to trial. The divorce was finalized on a Wednesday in June, 8 weeks after I'd found that recorder behind the console table. I sat in the courtroom in a navy blue dress Megan had helped me pick out. Brandon sat on the other side, thinner than I'd ever seen him, dark circles carved under those green eyes. He didn't look at me, not once. When the judge signed the final decree, I felt something I didn't expect. Not triumph, not relief, just a vast, exhausted quiet, like the silence after a storm passes and you step outside to see what's still standing. The criminal case took longer. Brandon was formally charged with forgery and fraud in August. Victor Pratt negotiated a plea deal, 2 years of probation, $15,000 in fines, and a felony on his record that would follow him like a shadow for the rest of his life. The VP position at Mid-South evaporated. Gerald Hutchins, the real Gerald Hutchins, fired Brandon 3 days after the charges became public. Danielle and I stayed in touch. Not as friends exactly, more like two people who survived the same disaster and understood each other in a way no one else could. She texted me in July. Karen Bishop blocked him on everything. Apparently she found out about both of us from a mutual friend. He's alone now. I read the message, set my phone down, and felt nothing. He was a closed chapter. Megan threw me a freedom party on the 4th of July. Her words, not mine. We sat on my back porch, the same porch where she'd once told me Brandon and I just made sense, and we drank wine and watched fireworks bloom over the Maple Ridge Community Pool. She raised her glass and said, "To Ashley Whitfield, who mopped her way to the truth." I laughed. A real laugh, the first one in months that didn't feel performed. I went back to teaching in the fall. My second graders drew me pictures of cats and rainbows, same as always. I stood in front of that classroom and felt solid again. Not repaired, not the same as before, but solid, like a bone that broke and healed back thicker. I still live in the house on Larkspur Court. Some nights I walk past the hallway console table and my hand brushes the wall behind it, feeling the smooth baseboard where that recorder once sat. There's nothing there anymore, just paint and wood and the faint smell of lemon cleaner. People ask me sometimes what I learned. They expect something profound, about love, about trust, about the signs you should watch for. But the truest thing I can say is this. I learned that the person willing to mop the floors is usually the person holding the marriage together. And sometimes, when you get on your knees to clean up someone else's mess, you find exactly what they were hoping you'd never see. I found a voice recorder, but what I really found was my own voice, and I will never let anyone silence it again.